It was the night of April 14, 1912. The sinking of the Titanic began. The ship was considered to be so well constructed, it was believed that she could stand any amount of damage and still remain afloat. However, the Titanic proved this idea wrong in a horribly tragic way. We ask ourselves, how did the Titanic really sink? Obviously, the instigating factor was the collision with the iceberg. What really caused over 1,500 of people to lose their lives in this disaster? According to some hypotheses, Titanic was doomed from the start by the design so many lauded as state-of-the-art. The second critical safety lapse that contributed to loss of so many lives were the number of lifeboats carried on the Titanic. Those boats could accommodate 1,178 people, where the Titanic could full carry 2,435 passengers, and a crew of approximately 900 brought their capacity to more than 3,300 persons. With this being said, we ask ourselves the question. We now ask, why was the boat going at full speed even though they noticed the iceberg? Secondly, why were there a shortage of lifeboats? Thirdly, was it really an engineering factor that caused this? This brings us to our discussion of the Titanic.
Brief background into the organization.
RMS Titanic was first conceived in 1907 and met tragedy at 1912. At the beginning of the 12th century, there was big competition for transport of mail, passengers, and cargo between nations and across seas via huge ships. In an effort to meet this competition, White Star Line's managing director J. Bruce Ismay engaged Belfast shipbuilders Harland and Wolff to build 3 large ships, otherwise known as the Titanics, that would become the largest moving objects ever made by man. The 3 Royal Mail ships were named Olympic, Titanic, Gigantic. Gigantic's name was later changed to Titanic. The ship were made to be identical, but the Titanic was to be the flagship. The keel of the Titanic was laid out on March 22, 1909. Over a period of 26 months, Harland and Wolff's shipyard laborers worked for 9 hours a day, 6 days a week to construct a massive hull. The White Star flagship would have 2 reciprocating steam engines and a turbine engine to power the center propeller, a double-plated bottom, and a sophisticated system of 16 watertight compartments provided the best security possible. The Titanic superstructure was completed on the 31st of May 1911. The ship slipped gracefully into the River Lagan on 22 tons of tallow, train oil, and soap, and was towed to the fitting basin. 3,000 carpenters, engineers, electricians, plumbers, painters, master mechanics, and interior designers were tasked with fitting the whole ship out with the latest in marine technology and the most luxurious interior and decorations. At last, on April 12, 1912, she was completed. After being certified seaworthy, Harland and Wolff handed her over to White Star Line, and the Royal Mail triple screw steamer Titanic departed for a place in history under the command of Captain Smith.
External and internal challenges in which the company operated.
At the beginning of the 20th century, there was big competition for the transport of mail, passengers, and cargo between nations and across the sea via huge ships. The 3 Royal Mail ships were built to compete with the Canal, which already had the fast and excellent cruise liners Lusitania and Mauretania. Both of these ships were incredibly quick. The Lusitania was able to reach a top speed of 26.7 knots, whilst her cruising speed was 25 knots. To fly the flag of Great Britain's and uphold national honor. Even though Titanic was ultimately owned by American business interests, the ship was built in a British yard operated by British subjects, manned by British crews, and perceived by the public as a British ship. This quote hints at the possibility that there may have been political pressure from the British government on White Star Line to build the ships in an effort to show the world that Britain was powerful and commanded the seas. There is no evidence to suggest that in this effort the ship was built too quickly or that corners were cut in its design. Saving on cost. A draft of rules by the British Board of Trade made in 1894 only required Titanic to carry the maximum of 16 lifeboats. However, by 1912 this draft was drastically out of date, as the Titanic was 4 times larger than the largest legal classification considered under the 18-year-old rules. The shipping industry was apparently fully aware that the lifeboat regulations were due to be changed, and the Titanic deck spaces and davits were designed for an anticipated boats for all policy due to be drafted. However, White Star were not going to install the additional boats until required. Lifeboats were expensive to purchase and maintain and took up valuable deck space. Design. The lifeboats also had an effect on the ship's stability, which in turn could potentially be a safety issue to the company. Public attraction. It was also perceived that a large amount of lifeboats, safety devices, and safety gears gave the public the suggestion that the vessel was unsafe.
Describe the culture within the organization. First, they were overconfident, and second, they had poor organization. The Titanic was touted as the safest ship ever built, so safe that she carried only 20 lifeboats, enough to provide accommodation for only half her 2,200 passengers and crew. This discrepancy rested on the belief that since the ship's construction made it unsinkable, her lifeboats were necessary to only rescue survivors of other sinking ships. Captain Smith considered the fact that it was a clear night with good visibility and no ice fields were in sight, so he did not reduce his speed even though they received many warnings.
The contribution of the culture to the cause of disaster. In reviewing the active failures that led to the disaster, we begin with Captain Smith. Captains are ultimately responsible for everything that happens on the ship. When he was informed of an ice field ahead, Captain Smith did not reduce his speed. He considered the fact that it was a clear night with good visibility and that no ice fields were in sight. Moreover, he was being subtly pressured by the owner to set a new speed record. The Titanic would be much more marketable if it could cut a day or two of the nearly week-long voyage from London to New York. Captain Smith went down with the ship as he was expected to. Wireless Officer Phillips was responsible for sending and receiving messages on the one radio channel available at the time. He placed priority on sending out personal messages for Lady Astor and others. While he did receive and pass on some iceberg warnings, he asked the senders to stop transmitting them. Officer Phillips went down with the ship because he stayed and kept sending SOS messages. The lookout, Fred Fleet, was also involved. He was an experienced seaman and was the first to spot the iceberg ahead at 500 yards, which is about a quarter of a mile. Visibility should have allowed him to spot an iceberg at 1,000 yards or greater, but Fred Fleet never located the binoculars. The binoculars were found 80 years later, after the ship had sunk. Nobody oriented Fleet on the location of the binoculars because there had been no shakedown cruise. Fleet manned one of the lifeboats as he was supposed to.
These active errors are not what led to the loss of life. What caused the loss of life was the inadequate number of lifeboats. The Titanic had 16 lifeboats along with 4 Eagle Heart collapsibles, but needed 32 to accommodate everyone on board. At the time, the British Board of Trade had lifeboat requirements based on the tonnage of ship and not the number of people.
However, the board was considering changing its regulations to a passenger-based system. The ship owners opposed the change, stating that it would be too expensive. Briefly discuss what could have been done differently to avert the disaster. So here are some points. The installation of more lifeboats, thus everyone has a chance of survival. Evacuation plans to be put in place so that everyone can evacuate quickly. The crew needs to take on warnings sent by other ships and proceed with caution through ice fields. Also have multiple seamen to look out for close by icebergs with binoculars so that if one can't see it, others can warn them.